Hello everyone and welcome to the next lesson. In this lesson, we talk about super elevation. Now, super elevation is a much more complicated topic, but what you always do is when you're designing junctions, there are compromises. There are things you have to do. You have to understand the super elevation. You have to understand what are the nearby surroundings before you super elevate. It may not make sense to super elevate a junction and the nearby surroundings are going to suffer. But at the same time, you need to consider drainage. So how do you super elevate a junction? So we are going to look at, for example, we have this case. We have a dedicated, in this case, we could say, normally if you're driving on the left-hand side, it would be a dedicated left turn. So something along these lines. So we have this left turn. Let me use this. So we have this left turn as you're coming. So as you start to come, it starts to super elevate. This is the left turn. If you're driving on the left-hand side. If you're driving on the right-hand side, you'll be doing what we have here. So we're trying to ask ourselves, what's the super elevation at point A? What's the super elevation at point B? What's the super elevation at point C? And what's the super elevation the moment you start at point D? Now what you see here is just a breakdown of how each is. When you start at point A, you have what we call the standard cambers. So if maybe you have minus 2.5, you'll have minus 2.5 or minus 2.0 based on where you're coming from. As you got section B, we again maintain the same. But as you see the road is starting to expand, we are just expanding based on the camber of the existing road. The moment we get to point C, you can see again we are extending. Point C was this. Again we are extending because remember it has widened. So now we have what we call the crossover, crown lane. So we are point C and now we go to point D. What you're noticing is point D, the main road could have a camber. You have a straight point, then you have a camber going downwards. Okay, again, and this is very important when you're considering. We shall see this when you're grading the junction furthermore in detail. And then we have point E. Point E is where we have finished and the junction is going on its own. What you find here is that now the edge is for the island. Okay, what you have here in between. So as you're moving here, there is like the island, and in most cases could be the nose, which tends to be a bit not that flat. It should allow water to move, but it's a transition from the normal, from this to a full super elevation, where the junction now has started, the left turn lane or the right turn, if you're driving on the other side, has started to fully curve. Now again, this other one is a demonstration of the same. If you look at all these, they're all similar demonstrations, showing you now you can see here, because the lanes are, you find that this junction is located in a curve. Now these are very important when you're designing expressways or designing junctions that are in urban areas, and there's so many. It's important to understand how we treat the super elevation. So you can see because the junction is already in a curve, we're already on full super elevation. And as it widens, you extend the roadway. As it further widens, you extend the roadway. And once you reach this point, you can find these two are going to be at different super elevation. Okay? So transition from this to that is very important. This is what makes your grading really good. Then you could have situations, as I mentioned earlier, of where this is expanding and is showing this. So you can see we've shown the island here. Okay? And this is the full super elevation. Now, super elevation is its own topic. We can go further into detail. I also add on the course website. If you don't understand super elevation, I've shared with you 2 videos that explain super elevation in detail. And when you watch that video, you can always come back to this to understand. So I hope to see you in the next lesson. If you have any questions, don't forget, you can always reach out at support Highway Academy. You can always reach out to the WhatsApp group or email.